In this full Klaviyo email marketing course, I'm going to show you the exact processes that we're using to literally generate millions of dollars for our clients. What we're going to cover is how to grow your list, segmenting your audience so every message feels personal, writing copy that actually drives sales, building automated flows that work while you sleep. Everything is going to be timestamped down below in the description, but this video has been recorded in a sequential way so that it makes sense to go from section to section, but feel free to skip, go to the sections that you feel like you need the most help with, and enjoy the video. So firstly, why should you actually listen to me? Who the hell is this guy wearing a baseball cap, wearing a Nike top, talking about email marketing? So my name is Adam. I'm the co-founder of Retention for Brands. Our agency has been responsible for over $100 million of sales through email, SMS marketing, and other retention channels as well. And we've worked with over 150 e-commerce brands so far. So this is why you should listen to me. You don't have to, but just want to put these numbers here from some client screenshots just so you kind of get an idea as to what work we're kind of doing with some images of me and some clients out in Vegas. So what we're going to cover is why email marketing matters, so what it actually is, the business case for email marketing, a Klaviyo walkthrough, so we'll dive into the platform, get familiar with everything, where to find stuff, pop-up forms, campaign strategy and segmentation, how to actually build campaign calendars, email copywriting, flows, and deliverability. So first we're going to talk about why email marketing actually matters, right? So advertising costs are rising every single year. Google, Meta, TikTok, all of them are getting more expensive, and it is literally not slowing down. This means brands are paying literally way more to acquire a customer, and for a lot of brands, the math isn't mathing, as the US guys say. So they're spending more to acquire a customer than that customer even spends in their lifetime with the business. That just does not make sense. So how do brands stay a bit more profitable? They maximize the value of every customer coming into their database through email and SMS marketing. Because once you have someone's email address, you own that relationship. You're not paying rent to Mark Zuckerberg through Meta ads every time you want to reach them. So if you don't have their email, if you want them to come back to your website to make another purchase, you've kind of two ways. You're either going to acquire them through advertising, so you're going to have to pay to get them again, or else you could get them to come back through organic content, or else they just come back naturally themselves anyway, without any advertising, without any organic. So email marketing right now is not just a nice to have, it's definitely the difference between a brand that can scale profitably and one that literally will burn cash every single day, every single month. So what we're going to cover here is getting started with Klaviyo. Klaviyo is the email marketing platform we are going to use for this full course. This course is definitely not obsolete if you aren't using Klaviyo for your email or SMS marketing. I would definitely recommend using Klaviyo. I personally have no affiliation to Klaviyo. We just use it for like 95% of our clients. It definitely has the most functionality. Only slight downside is it is a bit expensive for brands, but it definitely pays for itself for sure. So why Klaviyo? It's built specifically for e-commerce brands, not generic email marketing. It integrates seamlessly with Shopify, WooCommerce, and all major platforms. It has powerful segmentation that lets you target customers based on behavior, not just basic lists. You have pre-built automations as well, which makes it easier for beginners to get familiar with how to actually build out these workflows. And it obviously has the best in class analytics, so you can see exactly what's making you money. So if you're kind of wondering what is Klaviyo, think of it as your email marketing command center. It handles everything: building your list, sending campaigns, automating flows, tracking revenue, making sure that your emails actually reach people. So what we're going to cover right now is the Klaviyo basics. So we're going to go over setting up the integration, so how you can connect this to your store. So we're going to go through a Shopify example. However, it's virtually going to be very similar depending on whether you're using Shopify or whether you're using WordPress or something else. We're going to cover your branded sending domain, something that's really important and is now a requirement to set up before you start sending out emails. And then of course, getting familiar with the platform as well, how to, look at campaigns, what to actually read there, how to go into flows, how to go into segments, sign up forms. We're going to explain all of that stuff. And these are kind of like the main pillars of email marketing, but we kind of left one out here, which is kind of covered in the branded sending domain, which is deliverability. So that kind of encapsulates everything you really need to know about a Klaviyo account or any email marketing account for that matter. Okay, so now we're into the Klaviyo account and we're just going to kind of play around here a little bit. We'll go through the integration, the branded sending domain, and obviously play around the platform, get familiar with everything inside here. So firstly, I'm using a test account here just to demonstrate how to actually use the platform. We have no revenue coming through this because there's no store really. But what we have done is set up the Shopify integration with a dummy Shopify store. So how you do that is what you'll need to do is you'll need to go to integrations. Once you're in integrations, you'll see Shopify here, but you'll only see Shopify once you've actually integrated. So what you can do is you can either go here and explore apps, type in Shopify, go through the setup wizard. It's going to go through just connecting it with your Shopify store. And it should be a pretty straightforward process. Once you have that done, you should see the Shopify integration come up here. Again, that process is really, really easy. So just connect it to your Shopify store, follow the setup wizard. Once you come in here, you're going to want to make sure that the Klaviyo app embed is enabled on your Shopify store. So if this isn't ticked, it should have an option to go into that. Once you go into that, you're just going to need to set on a toggle on your Shopify store. That just means that you can basically track website activity on your Shopify store. That data will feed back into Klaviyo. You'll want to make sure that you have add viewed product tracking to your site, and you want to track behavioral events as well. So what you'll also see here as well is you'll probably want to sync your Shopify email subscribers to Klaviyo. So you'll want to have these two ticked. Once you have these ticked, you'll see that you can pick a list. So for your email subscribers, push them to your main email list. This should be your general master list. And for your SMS subscribers, you might want to pick your SMS subscribers list. Pretty simple. So once you have that finished, you're just going to go and click update settings. Once you've done that, it's going to bring you through to here. You're going to have to log into Shopify, and basically it'll bring you back to Klaviyo. So that's pretty much it. So let me just go back here. And once you're in here, you should see this is green, so it's enabled. You've all these ticked. Make sure that they're going to the correct lists or whatever lists you choose, and make sure when you're finished, just update those settings. And that is essentially how you would set up your Shopify integration. So pretty simple. Klaviyo makes it simple. So next, what we're going to want to do is we'll want to head into the branded sending domain. So this is a very, very crucial part of setting up your Klaviyo account. It's actually a requirement. Before it was not a requirement. So what you're going to do is go into settings. And once you're in settings, you'll want to go to domains. And once you're in domains, you're going to want to add a domain. So you'll come in here and you'll essentially just add your domain. So I'm just going to say domain.com. You're going to go to the next section here. Probably won't even pick it up because it's actually not a real domain. Oh, it does. What you're going to do here is you're basically going to create your subdomain. So basically the purpose of this, your branded sending domain, it means that you're not sharing or sending off of Klaviyo's shared sending domain. So basically what that means is before, when everyone used to use Klaviyo, join Klaviyo, they were all on this shared Klaviyo domain. That meant that if other brands using this domain were like, they had poor sending practices, they had a lot of emails landing in spam, your domain reputation was marked the same. So your sender reputation was kind of impacted from other brands basically using Klaviyo or using the Klaviyo shared domain. So back in, I would say February of 2024, I believe, maybe it was this year, I think it was February 2024, Gmail and Yahoo and all of these email providers, they came out with new sending requirements, which basically meant that you had to have a branded sending domain to keep your sender reputation strong. And I'll explain what sender reputation means in a second. So what you'll want to do here is set up your subdomain. So you'll go in and you can put either send, you can put email, whatever that may be. You can just go with the recommended here, dynamic. You're going to click next. And then what's going to happen here is you can have an option here to automatically configure a domain with entry, or you can set this up manually. I would probably recommend just setting up manually because it's actually not that hard. What you'll do is you'll just select your domain provider. So a lot of people are on like either these options here. So a lot of people are on GoDaddy. And what you're going to do is you're going to follow these instructions here. So it's going to ask you to basically add some DNS records to your domain. You follow that process. Once you've done that, you're going to come through here and put in all of these DNS records into your domain host. So if it's GoDaddy, you'll just put it in there. And then what you'll want to do is after you've put that into your domain host, you'll want to click verify. And when you click verify, I'm not going to do it now because I use a fake domain. You'll want to make sure that, let me go back here. You want to make sure that you have it verified, and you want to make sure that that is ticked and your branded sending domain is active. One thing I'll say about this is just be very careful when you are starting to email out. If you already have an email list built up already and you haven't emailed at all, I would just go very, very slowly, very steadily at the start. Do not send out to your full list, because when you set up a branded sending domain, it means that like your sender reputation is starting from scratch. So if you send out an email to 1,000 people, 2,000 people, and you've never emailed before, you want to be a bit careful about that. Just don't do that. What I would recommend is if you are trying to warm up your list, try and pick small pockets. So if you have, let's say you have 10,000 subscribers, break that down into batches of 500, send them out campaigns. But when you're scheduling it, I would recommend scheduling it gradually sending it over a couple of hours. The reason being is because some inbox providers, especially Hotmail, they don't like when you send a big batch of emails at once, like a huge batch. So just be careful about that. So just make sure to gradually send these over a couple of hours. And Klaviyo gives you this option as well. you're able to basically send over however many hours you choose. So I'd recommend doing that. Another thing I forgot to mention a while ago, the thing I forgot about, was setting up your DMARC as well. So your DMARC policy. So Google has a lot of guides on doing this, but this is also another requirement. So it just came back to me. Another thing that I actually forgot to mention is your DMARC record, something that's really important. It's required, so you have to have this set up. But Google actually have guides on how to do this. So if you literally type into Google, setting up DMARC on Google, you'll basically be given some DMARC records or add DMARC records to put into your domain host. So very similar to how you did your branded sending domain, you'll want to put in your DMARC record into your domain host as well. So obviously, because I'm using a dummy account here, you can just look that up on Google. I can put in a guide on how to do that down in the description as well if you do get stuck, or feel free to leave a comment. I can provide a bit more context on how to do that, but it's very simple. All you need to do is just put those into your DNS or your domain host and you're pretty good to go there. Okay, so now that we've covered how to set up your integration, we've covered your branded sending domain, and we've covered your DMARC policy, what we'll want to do is just have a little play around inside Klaviyo, get familiar with the platform and understand like where things exactly are. So firstly, you have your home dashboard here. This is where you're going to see your revenue. Right now we have 0 because it's a test account. This is where you're going to see your top performing flows and your recent campaigns. Of course, we don't have anything, so we can kind of go through that in a second. So we're going to kind of like work our way down. So firstly, we're going to go into our campaigns, and this is where you will set up your campaigns. It's very, very simple. What you can do in here is go into here and just call it test campaign for the purpose of this. You want to select single channel, just to make sure that it is either email or text message. We're just going to do email for this example. And then you can come in here and select your list. I'm just going to click newsletter just for the purpose of demonstrating how to come in and do your campaigns. But you can come in here and use a load of different templates that Klaviyo has provided if you're stuck on the design front. And then once you select your template, so let's say we're going to pick this one. So we'll say we'll use this template. And once you're in, you'll have the ability to obviously edit all of this stuff. You can edit the background image if you want, and here are all of your blocks. Now, once you're in here, you'll see that you have a load of kind of save blocks. Well, I wouldn't even call them save blocks, but these are like the default ones that Klaviyo give you. You can also use some pre-built ones as well that they have saved. And also as well, you'll find in here that there is some universal blocks. So in the universal blocks, that is basically like, for example, if you wanted to save this table, so you like really like this layout and you want to use it in other emails, you can go like this and you can call it, for example, I might just call this table, just because it's a table. Once you have that saved, you'll be able to use that in further emails, and you can just go in and click universal there, and that will bring it up in the next email that you want to create. So that is pretty straightforward. Then next you have your flows. So in your flows, you can have the option to create from scratch, or else you have a load of options based off of like some pre-built templates. So if you want to come in here and create, for example, an abandoned cart, you can just come in here. Abandoned checkout. We'll select abandoned checkout, and what we'll want to do here is we'll just select this one, and we'll go use template. So this one is going to be a mixture of like SMS and email. You can obviously delete the SMS if you're not doing SMS, although I would strongly recommend doing SMS. And then once you're in here, you can kind of play around with these. You can go in and of course edit your SMS, edit your email if you'd like, and it works virtually the same way as the campaigns in the sense that you can obviously edit the same way. There's no difference in terms of the editing features there. So I'll set that live and exit. And then next, what you have here is your sign up forms. So in your sign up forms, you obviously have the option to create a form here. You can use some templates. You can choose form style as well. So you can choose full page, pop-up, embed, flyout, banner. 90% of the time pop-ups is going to be chosen. So you'll see that like when you select that, it'll show you all the pop-up options. And then once you come in here, you'll just make sure that you're going to the right list. So if you wanted to go to your master list, which I'd recommend, you push it to, in this case, your newsletter, create form. And then once you're in here, you'll have the ability to, of course, edit the styles. So you can change the styling up, if you can change the imagery. You can obviously play around with the targeting and behavior here. So you can choose to just only show this when customers are active on the site for 5 seconds. Generally what we've seen is like 5 to 10 seconds kind of be the sweet spot for a lot of brands, not every brand, but I definitely recommend testing that out, testing your display settings. And of course, in targeting as well, you don't want to show it to existing Klaviyo profiles. What I would also recommend as well is like not showing it on your cart and checkout page. So what you could do in here is exclude it on pages containing these words. So if you have that there, it's not going to show up and like impede on the customer's buying process, essentially. So that's something I would kind of recommend doing. Now, in your audience, you're going to find here, first of all, in your profiles, you're going to find all of your active profiles. And then in your lists and segments, we have some saved here that we kind of used internally previously. But what you can do in here is create your segments. And what you're going to have the ability to do is choose if they can or cannot receive email marketing, what someone has done or not done, someone's proximity to location, if they're in a list, if they're within the EU, properties about someone, and predictive analytics about someone as well. So this is pretty solid, and we'll kind of dive deeper into segmentation later on in this video. So if you are eager to get to that part, feel free to skip on to that part where we kind of do dive deeper into the segmentation side of things. In your content, you're going to find some templates in here. So this is where all your saved templates are going to be. You can obviously set up some coupons here as well if you want to use some unique coupons for Klaviyo. These can be quite good if you do want to actually have, let's say, a set time on these coupons. So if you want your coupon to expire in 10 days after the customer's received it, this is where you would do that. So it's pretty simple to set up. You just come in here, create a Shopify coupon if you're using Shopify, and you can set up your coupon that way. And then you just get literally a specific tag to include in emails, and that will have a unique code for everybody. Of course, last but not least, we have our analytics. So you'll have your dashboards in here. This is going to be your overview dashboard or your business review. Business review is a bit more detailed because it will give you stats on unique clicks on your campaigns and flows. Let me just go place order. You want to make sure place order selected. Of course, this is going to be 0 as of now. But once you're in here, you'll be able to see the message breakdown. So what campaigns are doing, what flows are doing. You can even see channel breakdown. How is email performing against SMS? On your campaign side, you can see these metrics like total recipients, unique opens, unique clicks, unique conversions. So it goes a bit more in depth than like your general overview. So I generally like using this overview here. It's quite solid. Even on deliverability as well, you can see your open, click, bounce, spam, unsubscribe rate, but you can also see the counts as well. So like how many, because sometimes you might see your click rate might be going up, but your amount of unique clicks might be going down, or vice versa. So it's pretty cool to kind of see the rates versus the counts, and I would always recommend looking at both of those stats. Okay, so now that you're familiar with how to set up the Shopify integration, how to do your branded sending domain, and you can play around within the Klaviyo platform itself, now it's time to get on to one of the most important facets of email marketing, and that is list growth. So let's dive in. Now, this is a problem that we're seeing across multiple e-commerce brands that we're speaking to every single week. And I'm sure it's probably a problem that you're facing yourself. So what we're seeing is a lot of people putting money into meta ads, into Google ads, into maybe organic sources as well. And this is going into a leaky bucket, right? Because your site visitors down here are slipping through the cracks. If you don't have your pop-up form dialed in, you're missing out on a load of data, a load of valuable subscribers into your email list. And to any email marketing strategy, your email list or your email list growth is essentially oxygen. So advertising costs are only going to rise. This means that maximizing your email and SMS capture has been more crucial than ever, because once you have their email address, like your email list is immune to rising ad costs, algorithm changes, giving you the control. You own this channel. Emails are far cheaper than ads, reducing customer acquisition costs and obviously for re-engaging customers as well. And you can build those relationships over time, sending personalized offers. Now, this is probably likely you with the advertising costs ever so rising, and they will continue to rise as well. So capturing these email addresses, capturing these SMS phone numbers is literally like, it hasn't been more important than right now. But in order to reap the benefits of email marketing, you need an email address. And the answer is setting up and optimizing your pop-up form. And in this funny little graphic here, you have your pop-up form filling in that leak. Now we're going to go through 3 different ways in which you can set up a pop-up form. And the first one's being a multi-step pop-up. And this is where the first section isn't actually asking for their email address. You're simply asking the customer, do they want a discount? Yes or no? And the psychology here is that if they tick yes or click yes, they're much more likely to give you the email address and then give you the phone number later on in step 2 of the pop-up form. So you're getting that micro commitment from the customer. The next way of doing it is doing a single step pop-up where you're essentially asking for that email address in the first like the first window of the pop-up. And what I strongly suggest doing is testing either a multi-step versus a single step, seeing which one actually, benefits your brand the most, which gets you the most subscribers. So would strongly recommend testing that out. Now, the third style is a full page pop-up, and I'm seeing a lot of D2C brands testing this out. It may very well work for your brand. The only thing is to be cognizant of the fact that it may impede site conversion rate, but again, you have to test this out for your own brand, and I strongly recommend you do that. Now, what we're going to do here is we're going to go into optimal pop-up settings, because I see a lot of brands getting this wrong, and it's literally leaking so many email subscribers into your list, or out of your list, I should say. So it's crucial that you get this correct. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to dive into a Klaviyo account and kind of explain how to set this all up. But first, before we do that, we're going to focus on timing. So generally what we've found is displaying the pop-up form 5 to 10 seconds after the page load is most optimal. The targeting, obviously you want to exclude people who are already on the list, but with the targeting, you want to exclude Klaviyo profiles and cart and checkout pages as well. Because, for example, if they're already on the list, you don't want them to see the pop-up form again. And if they're on the cart or checkout page, it's very unlikely you're going to want to show a pop-up form there, which could potentially damage your conversion rate on the checkout or cart. And then thirdly, accessibility. So what you'll want to do is set up a teaser here. So if the customer accidentally closes the pop-up form, they're easily able to open that back up again. Now, what we're going to do is we'll dive into the Klaviyo account and get straight into it. Okay, so we're in the Klaviyo account. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to build a form from scratch, just a basic template one, but I just want to show you how to set up these settings. So what we're going to want to do is obviously create a pop-up form. We can pick from a bunch of different templates. What you might want to do here is select pop-up, and it'll bring you some templates now. Kind of stayed the same, but nonetheless we can kind of pick whichever one we want and whichever one would look best for our brand. Now I'm just going to pick this one just out of random. We're going to call it test, and what is crucial here is that you'll want to make sure that it's going to the correct list. You want to make sure that if you're sending customers like perhaps a discount, that they're getting the correct email. So we're going to push them to the newsletter. This is the list that we've chosen for this dummy account. And as you can see here, as a side note, it's saying to include the teaser, and I strongly recommend you do that just in case customers accidentally close it. Now, once we're in here into the pop-up form, we're going to go into targeting and behavior. Now, the first things first is we'll want to make sure that the timing is set up correctly. What we'll want to do here is select based on rules, and what we're going to click here is after time delay, and we can go with five seconds here. Generally what we found is 5 to 10 seconds is the best, but again, this totally depends on your own brand, your own site traffic, so always test this out. Now, what you'll also want to do is make sure that these customers, if we go over to targeting, those who are already on the list, we're not showing to existing Klaviyo profiles. So just make sure that this is selected. Now, if you want to exclude the pop-up form from a cart or checkout page, what you can do is you can come down here and say don't show on certain URLs, and we'll say containing, and we're going to put in /cart and add another one. We're going to say containing and then /checkout. Now, just double check that this applies to your own brand. It probably should, but any link including or containing cart or checkout won't be, the pop-up form won't show on those links. So that's incredibly important that you have that set up. Now, if we just come back out here, now that we have our targeting and behavior set up, we'll also want to come and make a teaser. So the way the teaser works is if the customer clicks out of the form, they'll see this little widget down the bottom, and then they can click that, and then the pop-up form will open back up. So you can come in here and you can obviously make some changes to the copy. Of course, it's white, so it's actually disappeared there, but you can make some changes to the copy, and obviously, of course, make some changes to the design of it as well. So that is essentially how you would set the pop-up form settings in the Klaviyo account. Now, just to dive deeper on some Klaviyo specific settings, it's really important that you realize that Klaviyo uses AND logic. So when you're either choosing to display the pop-up form based off of a time delay or whether it's based off of page scroll, it's really important that you pick one or the other. For example, if you pick both after a time delay and after a page scroll, what that means is the customer will have to be on the page for a certain amount of time, and they will have to scroll a certain amount of, the page or the website. So that's incredibly important that you get that right, because if you have two rules set at once, you could be limiting the amount of people actually seeing your pop-up form, and hence, limiting the amount of people coming into your email list. Now, secondly, you'll want to make sure that double opt-in is turned off. I see a lot of brands not doing this, and what this means is you're adding an additional step for customers to actually get into your email list, because if you have double opt-in turned on, that means that once a customer signs up to your list, they're going to get another email saying, do you confirm your subscription? They have to click yes, and then they get the first email of the welcome series. So I would suggest turning that off just to speed up list growth and to make sure that there's no friction in the process when a customer signs up to your email list. Now, if you'd like to see the guide on how to actually do this, I'll leave the link to this guide down in the bottom in the description, and you can check that out. Now, another thing as well is if you're testing offers on the pop-up form, so perhaps you want to test 10% off versus $10 off, you'll want to make sure that the correct properties are set up on the pop-up form, so the correct customer gets the correct discount. And again, if you want to see that guide, click down below in the link in the description. You'll have access to this full guide, and you'll be able to watch the Loom video on how to exactly do this. So make sure to check that out. Now, on the note of A/B testing offers, after doing numerous amounts of testing across multiple different brands and pop-up forms, we have found the best offers to generally be, of course, a discount, so offering either a percentage or a dollar amount off their first order. Free gifts also work exceptionally well and may be better for the brand's margin. Free gifts are also a great offer to include on your pop-up form. You can obviously provide a complimentary item or give them free shipping, and depends on your brand, this actually might be a favorable option as opposed to giving a straight percentage discount, especially if you have a higher AOV brand. And the third option here is giving away free resources. So potentially you might want to give away some free guides, some free PDFs, potentially to show the customer how to use the products that you're selling. And this is really good for brands who are, not in the position to offer big discounts as well. So it works really, really well. Now, the one thing I will say across all of these offers is not only check how much this affects like customers coming into the list, because that's important. Of course, we're looking for list growth here, but what's even more important than that is checking how customers convert on those specific offers. For example, if you're testing 10% off versus $10 off, the $10 off offer may get you more email subscribers, but the 10% offer may actually get you more revenue. So it's always important to have a look at the conversion rates after the customer has signed up for the email list. That is really crucial. Now, finally, we're going to talk about A/B testing your pop-up form. And I think this is the lowest hanging fruit out of any email marketing strategy, because think about it. If you can maximize the eyeballs coming into your email list, the chances are, the probability is that you're going to maximize the revenue. So what I suggest doing here is obviously testing those offer types, compare different incentives, find what's best for your brand. Number 2 is analyzing those results, review the sign-up rates and the conversion rates, like I just mentioned, because that is super important. We're not only just trying to maximize emails, we're trying to maximize revenue here. So take note of which offers are performing better. And then finally, refine that approach. Implement those winning strategies and continuously optimize to get those best results. Okay, so now that we've covered pop-up forms and list growth, now it is time to get onto campaign strategy and segmentation. So let's dive in. First things first is we'll get to the timing, because look, timing is everything in email marketing. Sending campaigns at the right time obviously can significantly impact open rates, click rates, conversions, purchases, whatever you want to call it, right? So it's really key, first of all, to understand your audience's behavior, and you can do this through A/B testing, trying to figure out when is the most optimal time to send an email, right? Do they check their email in the morning? Do they check it in the evening? Generally speaking, what we have found at our agency, at Gen Z Media, is that people will tend to open like emails in the morning before work potentially, or when they get to work, and then in the evening or later in the evening when they've relaxed after dinner, they're sitting down there on their mobile, maybe they're on their laptop, whatever that may be. So this will come down to A/B testing send times, right? Send time isn't going to be the sole reason why someone is going to open the email. Generally speaking, if your content is good across, the journey that the customer has went through, let's say from the point where they first signed up to where they are now, if the content has been good in between, they're going to be looking forward to reading your emails anyway. So they'll make sure to, come back to them even if the time isn't optimal. But anyway, nonetheless, timing is still quite important. So Klaviyo has a smart send feature, which you can actually check out now. We'll go into that in a second, whereby you can actually find what the optimal send time is. Now, there is a caveat to this. The list has to be a certain size. I believe it is 10,000 contacts at the time of this recording, at least. But the way you can do this is we'll just click in here. And what you have to do is once you get to the schedule page, you're going to click and see this little window here. But for whatever reason, Klaviyo loves to change their UI literally every single week. So this could be very different by the time you're looking at this. But hopefully, by and large, the principles are going to be the same. So when you get to this window, what you're going to do is you're going to select Smart Send Time, and you're going to be able to choose your option. So you can do it focused, you can do it optimal time, exploratory send. Generally speaking, if you've never done this before, you're going to have to do the exploratory spread across 24 hours first. That way Klaviyo can then indicate what are the best times across that 24 hours, and then it can go on to the focus period, as you can see here, between 7 and 11 p.m. in the recipient's local time. And then it will find your optimal send time, in this case 9 p.m. in the recipient's local time zone. So of course, in relation to timing, again, holiday and seasonal campaigns are going to come into the mix as well. That should probably go without saying. But anyway, why this actually works, why timing works, emails sent at the right time are obviously much more likely to be opened, engaged with, bought from. Okay, it's not going to be the sole driver, but it is still quite important. Now we're going to go on to step 2. So who to actually send your campaigns to. And segmentation is obviously a big topic in email marketing. One huge mistake I see a lot of brands make is they over segment. You don't want to almost segment customers based on their their blood type, for example. You kind of want to stay a bit broader with it to a certain degree if your list isn't massively big. So generally speaking, what you're going to want to do is send primarily to the following segments, and we're going to discuss these one by one. And the first one is your engaged customers. So these are active customers who are opening, clicking your emails, let's say within the last 30 to 90 days, whatever that time frame is. And like generally speaking, the bulk of your sending is going to go to these customers. Now here is how this segment looks, right? You want to note as well that you might want to increase the days, the day count to 60, 90, 120 days, depending on how big of a segment you want to reach to. And also it depends on how your open rates are looking. So for example, if your open rates are above 40%, maybe it's time to increase that day count as well. So here's an example of an engaged 30 days, opens or clicks. So again, if you're reaching above 40% open rates on, let's say, this segment, for example, consistently as well, by the way, then it's maybe time to increase that to 60, 90, 120 days to try and get more people into that engaged segment. The next one you're going to want to look at is the engaged buyers. So in this case, these customers have already purchased from the brand. They're familiar. They probably have liked the product, hopefully, fingers crossed. So with these customers, what you want to do is focus on, further product recommendations, trying to cross-sell, upsell them onto other different products, loyalty rewards, and the likes, right? This is what the segment looks like. They place the order at least once over all time. They've clicked or opened an email within the last 30 days. Sometimes I see brands, they will create a segment of buyers without them being engaged, and there could be customers in that buyer segment who haven't opened or clicked an email in quite some time. So it's important to make sure that they're engaged. They're an engaged buyer, not just a buyer, but an engaged buyer. So that's important to know. Same goes for non-buyers. Exact same structure, except you're going to place, it's going to be placed order 0 times over all time instead of placed order at least once over all time. So they've never placed an order. And with these customers, or not even customers, but contacts, they've never placed an order. They don't have the trust built up with your brand yet. They don't trust it fully. They haven't pulled the trigger. So what you want to do with these customers is showcase social proof, build that trust, compare the products against competitors, us versus them, behind the scenes content, brand building content. And what you're trying to do here is remove any objections that they may have and build that trust. They're the kind of 2 key things that you want to do with this segment. And oftentimes when I'm auditing e-commerce brands, I'll see that they don't realize they have a lot of non-buyers on their list. Sometimes it could be 50, 60, 70% of their list is a non-buyer. And that is obviously costing the brand money because they have to pay for those contacts to be on the email provider. And obviously, they just assume that because they have a list of a certain size, that is a good thing, which it can be. But if a lot of them are non-buyers, you need to then realize that there's a lot of work that needs to be done to try and convert all of these customers. Not even customers, but contacts, I should say. Then moving on to VIP customers, this kind of depends on your brand, how often customers do purchase from the brand, but generally speaking, we would set up a VIP segment as such. This would be customers who place an order over 3 times, and what you want to do here is just essentially treat them like royalty. They've spent, probably a lot of money with the brand, and they're a loyal customer, so maybe give these customers, personalized offers, like VIP only content, early access to sales, early access to product launches, anything that makes them feel exclusive. Also, another really good thing to do with VIP customers is ask them for feedback. They've bought over 3 times in this case. They've went through the process over 3 times. So you might as well ask them for some feedback. And these are more likely to be brand advocates. So you can get very solid qualitative feedback off of these type of customers. Now we're going to go on to win back opportunities. So these are customers who may have placed an order at least once overall time, but they haven't purchased in the last, let's say, 6 months. Again, this timing is going to depend on the exact product that you're selling. Of course, like sometimes, if you're selling a product that should last, let's say, a year plus, maybe that could be a mattress, maybe 180 days mightn't work in that scenario. That's just a random example, but hopefully that kind of paints the picture as to how this, time delay can vary from brand to brand. Generally with these customers, you're going to want to try and build up that trust again. There could be the factor playing here that they might have bought before, but they didn't like the product. Maybe you want to try and resell them on the benefits. If it's a supplement, for example, maybe you want to try and resell them on the benefits of consistent use of the product. Same with skincare. Always trying to push consistency of using the product. That mainly applies to consumable products, but that is, of course, another example of a segment that you'll be reaching out to. And generally speaking, like those few segments there are where the bulk of your sending should go to. If your list is kind of getting bigger and bigger and bigger, maybe you can get a bit more granular with your segmentation. But I often see with some brands, they will segment customers down to the point where there is very little people in that segment, and you're not really giving yourself the best chance of, trying to convert them or trying to get at least a lot of sales out of the work that you've just put in. Because look, if there's only 100 people in that segment, there's only so much sales that you can get from that. Okay, so now we're going to go on to the content strategy. So what to actually include in your campaign calendar, your campaigns in general. And that kind of boils down to a number of different things, right? So first of all, we have value-driven content, or what I like to call sometimes as well, branding style content. Now, this may include customer success stories, user-generated content, personalized recommendations. And the goal here is to really try to build that deeper emotional connection with your audience, right? So when customers see themselves reflected in your brand, they're more likely to stay loyal and an advocate of your products. Now, what we're going to do here is we're going to go into a few email examples, some from our clients, some from other brands, and we'll just have a little sconce here at some value-driven emails. Now, as you can see here, most of these emails are featuring reviews. What we're doing here is, of course, building that trust. We have some, in a sense, user-generated content, customer reviews with a picture with them, with the products. Same goes here. This is driving value, building that, I suppose, brand equity in the eyes of the customer. Another one here is a value-driven email where we're showing the dosaging for a specific supplement. And over here, this is just a brand building email as well. So it's quite simple, but try and think of this as brand building stuff. How can we build as much trust in the eyes of the customer? Generally, speaking, this kind of content is going to be really good for non-buyers as well. You're building that trust, you're building that trust over time. Now, what we'll do here is we'll flick back to the doc, and hopefully that all makes sense in regards to value-driven emails, or what you can also call branding style emails as well. Now, we're on to educational campaigns, and I strongly recommend checking out Athletic Greens emails as well, because they are absolutely exceptional at doing educational content. Now, when it comes to this style of content, what you can include is product tutorials, how-to guides, industry insights and trends, and obviously addressing common questions or pain points as well. So maybe you want to do an FAQ email, which can be very powerful. And that's a very powerful email that you can include in some flows as well. For example, an abandoned checkout flow. You can obviously address all of the possible objections a customer may have. Now, when it comes to educational campaigns, we'll just have a look at a few ideas again. So in this file, what we'll do, I nearly knocked over my laptop. What we'll do is we'll just come down here and we'll have a look at some educational campaigns, right? So in this campaign here, catch more disease with adenosine. So this is obviously implying that with adenosine as an ingredient, you can get more sleep. And we're explaining here how it works, the ins and outs of that ingredient of a specific product. As again here, we're posing an idea of skin minimalism. It's a hard one to say, and showing how different products can solve a specific issue. Here's quite a long educational style email. You can see here we have a nice graphic explaining a bit more about the gut microbiome. But this content here, what this will do is it will invoke a feeling of reciprocity with a customer. So the more you give to the customer, in the sense that the more you educate them, the more likely they are to, reciprocate that feeling and obviously make a purchase. Now, a really cool brand here, Vacation. You can see here that like you can kind of blend product in with education, which tends to work quite well for our clients as well. So try and give some value, and then within that, show how products, relate to that piece of education that you are giving, and overcome a certain pain point or problem. And of course, again, AG1, very, very good brand when it comes to email marketing. You'll see here that they're explaining all the benefits that you can feel from the product, and explaining exactly how that works, what the ingredients do and how that works. So yeah, hopefully that makes sense. Now, we'll just flick back to the doc here again and go on to promotional campaigns. So generally speaking, you want to keep your content 80% educational / branding and then 20% promotional, because you don't want your customers to become offer blind or discount blind. You don't want to be just plowing them with 10%, 20% discounts all of the time, because customers will just get kind of tired of that, right? But when those times do come, of course, because you might have holiday sales, promotions, you want to make sure that you're doing it right. So a few ways in which you can do that is using action-orientated language, like exclusive, last chance, don't miss out, strong visuals as well, of course, and making it personal as well where possible. Now, what we'll do here is we'll just go back into this doc and we'll have a look at some promotional emails. Now, one thing to kind of note across all of these emails here, some clients, some not, is that when you kind of have a quick glance, you can basically grab the essence of the offer straight away. That's really important for a promotional email, because at the end of the day, all you want them to do is just claim their discount. So make that front and center super, super clear. The only one here is this one that doesn't, make that abundantly clear at the start, but this is actually a client of ours, and the subject line preview text, of course, mentioned the offer, and it was, a seasonal one as well relating to Mother's Day. So that's something that you can notice here. There is the offer front and center across all of these emails. That is quite important. There's no need to make your promotional emails too long either. Just give the offer and go. Simple as. Very similar to how you would do that in a welcome series email one as well. Wherever you're giving an offer, give the offer and go. Don't overcomplicate things. Don't almost try and sell yourself out of it. Just give them that offer and then leave it at that. Okay, so now just moving on to kind of content styles that we've seen work best is number one is storytelling. And you've probably heard this so many times across, all social media channels, that people always talking about the importance of storytelling, but it is true. Storytelling is so important, and it's one of the most valuable skills in today's market. So if you can learn how to storytell, you'll make a lot of money for your brand or for your agency as well. Now, second one is visual heavy emails. Because of the age of TikTok, people's attention spans are absolutely fried. So rather than sending very copy heavy emails, this kind of depends on your audience demographic. Let's say it's kind of a slightly younger audience, or an audience who's used to using technology or who is used to using apps such as TikTok. You'll want to make your emails much more visual heavy rather than copy heavy, just to try and make your emails bite-sized, concise, clear, punchy, and it's not too long. People don't get too bored. Unfortunately, that's the way it's going. But with some of our clients who have an older audience demographic, we are able to use longer style content, because if you think about it, those types of customers in the older demographics are used to reading newspapers. So if you're used to reading newspapers, you're probably going to sit down and read an email that's a bit longer than your average e-commerce direct to consumer email. And thirdly is plain text emails. Now, with a younger demographic, it's key to make this short and punchy, but you can get away with longer style copy for older demographics, and generally for brands who sell a consumable product. So if it goes on you or in you, generally you can use quite long plain text emails, and we've seen them work really well for supplement brands and skincare brands. Because if you think about it, if you have a really nagging pain point, such as, for example, if you suffer from really bad acne, and you get an email from a brand explaining how to resolve that issue, and it's really causing you a lot of pain, you're going to sit down and you're going to read that email, and you're going to try and figure out why this problem is happening and how to actually improve it. Now, key thing here is just matching content styles as well. So try to obviously chop and change the styles of emails that you're sending to obviously find out what is actually working best as well. Now, I've already mentioned this in terms of balancing content types. You can stick with a 70-30 rule or 80-20 when it comes to educational versus, promotional sales emails. And last but not least, test. You probably might have got this from a few of my videos so far, but nothing is set and forget, and you have to eliminate guesswork with with everything, right? So your campaigns should obviously always be A/B tested, and you're constantly improving on feedback, because you will literally just be flying blind if you're not A/B testing. So that's important to maybe perhaps, for example, test a designed email versus a plain text, test one image versus another image. You'd be so surprised the difference that a small tweak like that could make. Now, in the next section of this video, we're going to be covering what to actually send in any given month for your brand. So the next section is going to be campaign calendars. So campaign calendars, they're obviously vitally important to ensure that you're sending at a consistent volume, you're sending to the correct segments, and you're meeting monthly targets. So they can obviously, of course, vary a lot depending on the brand that you're dealing with, or depending on your specific brand. For example, some brands might only send 2 campaigns per week, and that might be totally fine. Whereas some other brands and some other clients that we work with send a lot more than that, without actually having an effect on deliverability. Now, I actually have a guide on this. It's in another video, so I'll link that up at the top to check out how you can actually send hypothetically every single day without harming your list. So again, every brand is going to be totally different. Other kind of methods you can use as well is obviously communicating with the client if you're running an agency, or obviously internally if you're running a brand, and of course using your own judgment and a bit of ChatGPT to help as well. So just kind of diving in again, we'll go through these four little headings, but we'll just dive into the first one. So creating campaign calendars using your own judgment. So what we do internally is we'll sit down before creating campaign calendar, and we'll ask ourselves, are there any repeatable campaigns for this client or for the brand? Is there anything repeatable that we can send out that performs well, such as newsletters, emails about a podcast, whatever that may be for your brand? Maybe it's a product spotlight that actually works quite well. Sometimes for certain clients that we work with, we might send out, for example, a product spotlight at the end of the month, showcasing reviews on that product and, giving some education on it as well. There's also, some evergreen campaigns you can use. Examples of evergreen campaigns could be an us versus them campaign. It could be a blog style campaign. It could be, again, a newsletter. So there's a lot of different options that you can have there for an evergreen campaign. And they're campaigns that you can send at any time of the year. And generally they do perform quite well. Another example of that would be, a review-based campaign as well. I'm after skipping step 2, but what's really important when you're building a campaign calendar is having a look at the last 30 to 90 days, or even the last 12 months. See what performed well. Of course, there may be sales emails that perform really well, so just take that kind of out of the pot. But if you have non-discounted emails that have worked well in the last 30, 90 days, just try and use that angle, but just spin it a different way. For some of the clients that we're working with, we found one good angle, or maybe 2 or 3, 4 or 5 good angles. And over time, we've just been spinning different variations of that, and they always perform well. So keep trying until you find a campaign that works well, and then just keep making iterations on that. Of course, not sending it every single time you're sending out an email, but just use it and put it into your arsenal. Again, if you're running an agency, of course, did the client mention that they want any specific campaigns? That's fairly straightforward. And of course, if there's any product launches or promotions coming up, that needs its whole other different type of strategy as well. So that's important to take note of. Of course, then obviously the segments that you want to focus on, once you've built out the campaign calendar, is generally 9 times out of 10, it'll be your engaged customers, your engaged buyers, your engaged non-buyers, VIPs, lapsed customers. So this should just say engaged. So that would include both buyers and non-buyers. This is where the bulk of your sending should really go. Of course, if your list is again, as I mentioned down here, above 30K, or that kind of does depend on the brand, you can get more granular with it as well, depending on what products that they were looking at, depending on how active they are on the website, all that kind of stuff. So we'll just dive into different types of email campaign ideas that you can use for each segment. Again, I've already mentioned this. So for brands with bigger lists, think 30K and above, roughly speaking. That's a kind of a very rough estimate. Does depend on the brand. Segmentation does come into play a bit more, and you might want to hit up segments at a regular cadence, such as smaller segments, or smaller pockets of the list that are hyper targeted. So again, examples of what kind of emails you send to each segment that we just mentioned above. So engaged customers, the bulk of your sending is going to go to them. They're going to receive usual content like promotions, product-based emails, review campaigns, educational campaigns. For your engaged buyers, they already know the product and the brand. So you would be wasting your time kind of sending them,
like overly excessive social proof, reviews, etc. Because like they already trust the brand, they've bought the product already, they've went through the whole process, and they just kind of need like frequent reminders about the brand, keep them top of mind, and obviously like trying to sell them the benefits of consistency if it's a skincare or supplement brand or a consumable product. Because a lot of people might just buy it and they mightn't return, but you need to kind of prime them for that habit of the consistent use of the product. Again, that will apply to mainly consumable products. So like again, campaign ideas there for your buyers would be, educational campaigns, SMS campaigns. And what I mean by that is trying to get your engaged buyers into your SMS list. You could send them out surveys because obviously they've went through the process already, UGC requests, blog style emails, etc. Then for your engaged non-buyers, so they need a bit more convincing. Of course, they're going to need a bit more social proof, a bit more testimonials. And yeah, you just need to build up a lot more trust with them. So what we've seen work well is emails that compare like competitors versus the brand, so us versus them, educational content about products, behind the scenes, formulation processes if it's a skincare or supplement brand. Again, product based campaigns highlighting the benefits that they can expect to receive once they get the product. Then your VIPs, right? You're going to want to treat them like royalty. So like generally, like it depends on the brand and depending how you want to classify a VIP customer. But generally, like these customers might have purchased maybe 3 or 4 times plus. So they've been through the process a few times. They're really engaged with your brand. They're probably a very high value customer as well. So you could give them VIP only discounts or, VIP exclusive content as well, just to let them know that they're part of a select few of the brand who are obviously top customers. And then obviously, of course, lastly, your lapsed customers, win back opportunities. So they've purchased once, but they haven't returned for quite some time. So you need to remind them about the benefits that they're missing out on. Maybe they just tried the product for one time, and they mightn't have used the product correctly. Again, if this is a skincare supplement brand or a consumable product, if they haven't used the product correctly, you might want to remind them about how to get the most out of the product. So that's really important that you're hitting up your lapsed customers fairly frequently, because I'd imagine there would be a few of them inside your list for most brands. So just kind of moving on down here to examples of sending frequency. So generally, like speaking, this is kind of the cadence that we'd go for. Again, this will like largely depend on the brand that you run. But if we're sending out 12 campaigns a month, that means we'll hit up the engage segment 6 times, engage buyers on their own twice, engage non-buyers on their own twice, 1 to the VIPs and 1 to the lapsed customers. Again, that's very broadly speaking. So generally speaking, 70% of the campaigns go to the top 3 engaged segments, as listed above. So 70% are going here, and then the remaining 30% are going to the ancillary segments. So your VIPs, your lapsed customers. Now, this is a golden rule that we follow for campaign calendars. 70% of the content should be educational or branding based. So product education, blog emails, how-to guides, review showcases, newsletters, and so on. Now, of course, there are exceptions to the rule as well. Just look at the data that your email marketing account is telling you, or your Klaviyo account. Like if you are finding that product-based emails are working really well and more salesy emails are working really well, which is happening for some of our clients, then by all means go with it. This doesn't mean that like this is biblical or anything like that. But generally speaking, we find that like when you're not selling all the time, you tend to see better responses out of customers from that. But again, this will come down to your exact brand. Now, this would apply for anyone who's running an agency, of course, getting the client's input on calendars. But I'll just kind of fly through this quite quickly. It's crucial, obviously, of course, that we're aware of upcoming sales, product launches, holiday promotions, brand-specific campaigns, live events that the client could be attending. And again, if you're running a brand, that's important to put into the calendar as well. It's just so you're aware of it. And then kind of moving down here. So I might make another video on this, but this is, of course, I say a lot of people are doing this, but it's worth reminding about using ChatGPT for campaign calendars. So we have a little training here. I'll make a separate video on this, but generally the process that we do follow is what we'll do is we'll train up ChatGPT on the business. So we'll just paste a load of text from the client's website into ChatGPT. We'll paste a load of text from the brand questionnaire that we get them to fill out on the onboarding process into ChatGPT. And that will train up ChatGPT on the brand, and then it can provide some nice angles that you can come up with for your campaign calendars as well. So again, I'll make another video on that. But then, of course, campaign calendar benchmarks. So, of course, this isn't actually a way of like creating campaign calendar, but this is something that we follow internally, and I'd strongly recommend you do it for your brand or your clients as well. So what we do at any given time is we'll have campaign calendars planned at least 4 weeks in advance, because this just gives you a bit of buffer room in case something last minute comes up, a flash sale, an important announcement, whatever that may be. And again, whenever we have a monthly call with a client, the calendar must be prepared in advance of the meeting. That's a rule that we follow inside, because we either want to get approval from the client or just bring them through that. What we do as well is we build our calendars, build our calendars in Notion. So what we do is we'll put in the content style, put in the segment, and put in the exclusion segments. It's really important to actually show that to a brand that you're working with. Of course, like, this is how we're splitting up the campaigns. This is how this is who's being excluded. And just finally, before we hop off, I want to mention that we do exclude active subscription customers for any consumable brand. And this is something I've seen a lot of brands and agencies miss out on, because if you're including subscription customers in your emails, that may completely over attribute what the revenue is doing in your campaigns. Because, for example, if you send out a campaign and let's say a subscription customer clicks it, and then let's say tomorrow their subscription renews, that sale may be attributed to the email and like their subscription customer, so it's not really accurate. So we always exclude subscription customers from the bulk of our sends. Of course, we'll contact them, specifically to them, but of course they've reached like the peak of where you want customers to get to, so there's no point in annoying them.
Now it's time to dive into one of the more important aspects of actually creating any email, and that is the written word. So let's dive into email copywriting. For 7 and 8 figure brands, and actually for any type of e-commerce brand, no matter what kind of level you're at, the right copy can be the difference between getting the sale and not getting the sale, right? So this video is going to dive into the strategies, the styles, and the frameworks that make email copywriting a powerful tool in your arsenal, right? Now, first things first is we're going to go through the different styles of copywriting, because you might notice that, depending on the brand, they use a different tone of voice, they use a different style of copywriting as well, which we're going to discuss. And what you'll find as well is if you're looking at a lot of different brands, right, especially the bigger brands, what they'll do is they will mix a few different styles of copywriting into the one. So this will make a bit more sense as we kind of go through this video. But the first style that we want to kind of go through, right, is branded copywriting. And as I mentioned here, look, not all copy is created equal. There are different styles. This will depend on what your brand tone of voice is, what kind of personality it has, and so on and so forth, right? Different scenarios will call for different styles of copywriting, right? For example, in an abandoned cart email, your style of copywriting may want to be a bit different to, let's say, some form of weekly newsletter that you have that's more so educational, that's value driven. Now, going back to the initial point just on branded copywriting, first of all, we're going to go into what it is, and basically it's about maintaining a consistent brand voice across your emails, your advertising that reflects your brand's identity. Now, it's a style where you'll want to reinforce who the brand is, what you stand for, what your values are, and all that kind of good stuff, right? When to use this is, we like to love to use this in newsletters, welcome emails, and any content that's designed to strengthen obviously the relationship between your brand and the customer, right? So building that brand equity in the eyes of the customer, that's when you want to use it. Now, it's ideal for storytelling as well, about sharing stuff about how the brand started, again, what your values are, what your mission is, and a nice example of this, if you do remember, is Apple's shot on iPhone campaign, right? It's a prime example of branded copywriting. Very short copywriting, but hopefully this kind of gets the idea across, right? So the idea here was that the campaign uses value-driven copy to highlight the quality of photos actually taken with an iPhone, right? So as you can see here in this image, we have two women facing the other way, and we have down in the bottom, if you can actually see it, we'll zoom in a small bit, by Amani Willett, Cambridgeport, shot on iPhone. So the idea here is that by saying very little, the customer kind of knows the quality of the product, the quality of the photos on an iPhone, and it kind of gets that message across without actually, using long form copy to actually really sell it. It kind of sells itself, if that makes sense. And because Apple is such a world-renowned brand, they can get away with stuff like this, of course, because people are going to know what the shot on iPhone actually means, because they probably have an iPhone. And moving down here, right, to kind of more examples to do with email marketing. And Hugh will do this really well with their newsletter, so the digest. Bear in mind, I will have this document down below in the comment section, so just tap the link in the comment section if you want access to this to properly read through all of these emails. But you can see here, as I mentioned, using this style of copywriting in newsletters is a really good shout. And we do weekly newsletters, and by newsletter I mean educational content every single week for most of our clients, and this performs so well because you're making customers feel like they're part of the brand, they're part of the story, they're part of the mission, they're part of the values that your brand has. And a newsletter is a really good way of kind of getting this messaging across, right? So you'll see here that it's kind of mainly value driven, and you're driving customers towards, you know, value driven content, and this stuff works really well, right? Now next, we're going to go on to direct response copywriting, something that, like, you know, if you're in the copywriting space or email marketing space, you've heard quite a lot about. And it's essentially what it is it's basically just there to drive action. You're literally trying to get a direct response out of a customer, and it's persuasive, and you're looking to get that immediate response, whether that's making a purchase, going towards, you know, giving some form of details, signing up for something, downloading a guide. That is what direct response copy is there to do. Get that customer or that person to take that immediate action. Now, when you'd use this is probably in sales, you know, product launches, or any other campaign where you're just trying to get someone to complete a purchase or do some form of action, right? A really strong example of this is from the Wall Street Journal's Two Young Men ad, also known as the story of two men. Now, I'm not going to read through the full thing. You can access this down below in the comment section, this document. Have a read through this. This is one of the best pieces of copywriting I've ever read. I won't take credit for that. But definitely read through that. It is absolutely fantastic. And what it does is essentially, like, this is a long form print ad. It tells the story of two men who have similar backgrounds, but one becomes more successful than the other. Essentially, it transpires that the difference between two of them was one read the Wall Street Journal and one didn't. And then it's trying to drive a subscription to the Wall Street Journal. Obviously trying to drive that immediate action. So take a read through that. That is one of the best pieces of copywriting I've ever read. And I strongly recommend checking that out. Now, if you're more so interested in how this is actually done through email marketing, different examples you can see, we have AG1, we have Fields, and we have Surreal. One thing you'll notice is that, like, a lot of these brands will blend either like branded copywriting or direct response copywriting. So, you know, the lines may be blurred sometimes. It may kind of become a bit confusing, but essentially you just need to think, okay, whenever they're trying to drive an immediate action, that is direct response copywriting. And what you can see here is from AG1's email. We'll just zoom in here a bit, that they're really selling the benefits. So what people can expect when trying AG1 is they'll find their focus, they'll age well, they'll stay balanced, and we have, you know, of course, what is actually included in the product here with a direct call to action to try AG1. So you're trying to get a direct response there. Fields do this quite well also. Why going for the mints? So we're really trying to sell that. It has a great taste, consistent dose every time, rapid relief. It's vegan and 100% sugar free. So this is going to be removing some form of objection that a customer may have about trying out these mints. And we also have some social proof here to back up the claims or the statements that have been made up here above, right? Nice strong headline as well here, saying, if we just zoom in a small bit, fast acting and long lasting. My zoom is kind of acting a bit weird, but fast acting and long lasting, hitting directly on some pain points that customers may have, because they might find that, you know, the benefits of a certain product may take a bit of time to actually seep in. And then, of course, when they do, they don't last long. So immediately hitting on some pain points with a direct call to action to shop these mints. Surreal do the exact same thing here, in terms of trying to get a direct you know, action out of the customer. Now, you'll see here that they're probably not selling the benefits of the cereal too much, but what they are doing is they're using some branded copywriting in their tone of voice that makes the email kind of lighthearted. It's in the tone of voice of the brand. It makes it familiar, but you're still trying to grab, you know, or have at least a direct response out of the customer. So that will be some direct response copy, kind of mixed with a bit of branded copy as well. Now, if we come down here a bit, we have a third style, which is conversational copywriting. So again, you'll see this being mixed between, like, you know, you'll have maybe conversational copywriting mixed with a bit of direct response, or maybe conversational copywriting mixed with a bit of branded copywriting, or maybe all the three could be mixed together, right? So what this does is it engages your reader in a friendly, relatable tone, right? So it actually kind of sounds like a person, literally like a conversation, and it makes your brand feel more approachable than others, right? And it's kind of an important thing to know when you're writing emails is like, the email will likely be better if it sounds like it's actually written by a person, or at least to one person, right? So next time you go out and sit and write an email, try to write it for one specific person. If you build out a customer avatar, or if you have that on hand for either your brand or your clients, try to speak to that one singular customer in your emails and do it in a conversational tone and try it out. This stuff really, really works well. Now, you can use this in welcome sequences, customer follow-ups as well. We love to use this in post-purchase follow-ups and casual check-ins with customers, right? Now, I won't go into all of them, but one thing I absolutely love is this liquid debt email here, right? So we were worried about you, and this email is actually in the abandoned cart, I believe, right? So hey, it's me, the guy who writes all the emails for liquid debt. Listen, I don't like to break character like this, but did you die or get kidnapped or something, right? It opens up very conversational. It's funny, and if you can kind of make a customer like subtly chuckle when they're actually reading the email, look, the chances of you converting them are much, much higher, and it adds a lot more personality to the brand, right? So hopefully that kind of clears up as to what conversational copywriting is. You'll also see here, actually, we'll just go into Dr. Squatch's one, more grooming mistakes women hate and how to fix them. Looking, smelling, and feeling your best day in, day out is going to set you up with confidence you need, especially with the women in your life. How about we check in on a few more common grooming mistakes and get you dialed in on how to fix them. So using like kind of copy here that is kind of, I suppose, conversational, colloquial, even if you want to say it that way, makes the brand feel a bit more relatable, right? A bit more approachable. So that is what conversational copywriting does. You're a fan now, so again, kind of using some form of colloquialism or conversational language, again, makes the brand feel, a bit more approachable, a bit more friendly, and a bit more fun as well. Now, going on to storytelling copywriting, right? Now, this uses narratives to create an emotional bond with your audience, and it's about weaving a story that resonates with your audience on a deeper level, right? When to use this is like sharing your brand's origin story, customer success stories, or when you're introducing a new product line, for example, telling the story about how hard, the brand has worked to get the product to this point, sharing the, let's say the production process, how the product was made, so on and so forth, the different ideas that were at the table before the product was actually made, telling the story behind it, right? It's the perfect style of emails to evoke emotions and inspire action as well. Now, a good example of this here is when Coca-Cola personalized the names of their bottles, right? So the campaign used storytelling to create personal connections and framing the act of sharing of Coke as a way to share moments and stories with loved ones, right? So Coca-Cola leveraged this narrative in various ads, and I'm sure you probably remember this, showing people reuniting, celebrating, connecting over a Coke. They're sharing that emotion and turning a simple drink into a symbol of shared experiences, right? So that was a bit of storytelling copywriting, or storytelling marketing, advertising, whatever you want to call it, with this campaign that they ran, which I'm sure most of you will probably remember. Now, more examples of this is, again, we're not going to read through all of this, but the story of a 76-year-old man who got me into the best shape of my life, and it tells the whole story here about how that actually happened. Now, this is a really good piece of copywriting. Would strongly recommend having a read through this. Really, really good stuff. But you'll also notice here that we're actually, like, the author or the copywriter is actually looking to take some details here as well. So they're still trying to get a direct response out of the customer, out of the reader. So that is a nice blend of storytelling and direct response copywriting, right? So it's really important that you don't have to just use one style. You can always blend a few, and more often than not, blending a few actually is, it's more desirable copy, to be honest, and it reads, sounds a lot better. Now, another example here is from Blue Blocker storytelling. When I put on the pair of glasses, what I saw I could not believe, nor will you. And it's going to tell a story here. I'm about to tell you a true story. If you believe me, you'll be rewarded. If you don't believe me, I'll make it worth your while to change your mind. Let me explain, right? So it starts off quite well, nice and intriguing, and it's going off telling a huge story about these glasses, and again, looking for a direct response here, right? So we're still blending direct response with the storytelling. Now, if you're getting stuck and you're like, how the hell do I actually write some copy like this, right? You can use a lot of copywriting frameworks the next time you sit down, right? So use ChatGPT to even create copy using these frameworks, but I'm going to quickly explain a few of them. The AIDA, attention, interest, desire, action. Use that for persuasive emails where you want to drive some action. So what this would kind of look like is the attention part, 50% off. Interest, these deals won't last. The desire, you deserve the best. Action, shop now. That is a really, really simple version of how to apply the AIDA or the AIDA framework. A really popular framework used quite a lot, right? One of my favorite, the PAS, problem, agitate, solution. So what you're doing here is you're hitting the customer with the problem that they have, you're agitating that problem, and then you're positioning your product, your service, your solution, or sorry, as the solution, I should say. Now you'll use this when you're addressing a common pain point that the customer has. So an example here is struggling with dry skin. It's frustrating, we know. You could even go on a bit further here. Of course, this is just a simple example, but our moisturizer can help. This is why it can help. This is exactly what it does. These are what other customers have been saying about our moisturizer. Before after bridge, great for storytelling or transformational emails. Again, you can see an example here. We have the 4 P's, promise, picture, proof, push. The 4 U's, this is mainly for headlines, to be honest. Urgent, unique, ultra specific, and useful, by Robert Bly from his book, the Copywriter's Handbook, which I strongly recommend reading. And SLAP, SLAP. Right, so there's a few copywriting frameworks here that you can use, and you should, generally speaking, like whenever you're sitting down writing copy, you always use a framework. Always use a framework, and try not to, just aimlessly write. And look at, examples of good copywriting. Try to reword it in a way that suits your brand, right? Because these, like all these kind of examples, these examples work, right? So try and spin these in a different way for your brand. Now, next, we're going on to writing effective subject lines. This is actually one of the most important parts of your email because it's the gatekeeper, right? If you don't get someone to open the email, the rest of the copy goes out the window, right? So you need to have a really, really strong subject line. So how do you do this? There's a few key strategies here. So number 1 is keeping it short and sweet. Aim for 6 to 10 words. Try and keep it short because on mobile, if you have it too long, people won't be able to see the full subject line. You might want to create urgency, personalize it, call the person by name, and test and optimize as well. So always be testing some subject lines, see what actually works. Does a longer, let's say on the longer end, does a longer subject line work? Does a shorter subject line work? Do numbers or emojis work in the subject line, or do they not? And look, the subject line is your first and sometimes only chance to grab someone's attention. It sets the stage for the entire email, so you have to make it count. You absolutely have to, right? Now, moving on to headline copy. This is the second most important part because if you're treating the email like a funnel, the subject line gets the open. Now, if they open, the next thing that they're going to see is the headline copy, right? So you can actually, if you're writing headlines, you can even use the 4 U's by Robert Bly for crafting effective headlines: urgent, unique, ultra specific, and useful. So take that into consideration. But if we come back down here, a few strategies here is to be clear and direct, use curiosity, keep it benefit driven, and why this works is your headline is your hook, right? Most people aren't actually going to read beyond the headline. About 80% of people are just going to read the headline, and then the rest, they won't even bother reading that. So this is going to be one of the most important parts once someone actually opens that email, right? And you can see a few examples here. So from Armora, stop the clock. Birthdays are inevitable, but aging doesn't have to be. So obviously they're hitting on a pain point here in terms of aging, and the rest of the email will go on then to explain how their products help with that. Step onto campus with a fresh look. So you're foreshadowing, or you're future pacing what that customer will feel like once they use this product. Finding your new routine is an easy A. People are 20 faves below, right? So you're hitting on, I suppose I wouldn't call it a pain point, but a desire that the customer has about stepping onto campus with that fresh look. Ursa Major here, not your average SPF. Force Field SPF 30 is more than just powerful broad spectrum protection. It's a dreamy daily moisturizer that keeps skin happy and hydrated, right? So hitting on those desires of the customer, and also positioning this brand as being different from other competitors who also sell SPF. The mother of all skin solutions, join the waitlist to be the first to shop our newest collection, right? So it's building some form of intrigue, some excitement coming soon. So hopefully this is all making sense. These are examples of a few headlines that you could use for your brand. Now, just going back to what I was saying there about treating the email as a funnel, you have to treat it as such, right? The subject line will get the open. Once they open, the headline is going to capture their attention. So that's the next most important thing. The body copy is going to reinforce their decision, so you can explain a bit further about the product. But again, you don't want to completely overload customers as well, because people's attention spans are absolutely fried these days. So what you want to do here is you want to deliver your message, build trust, provide value. You could showcase some testimonials and might answer any questions, any objections that the customer may have, and of course eliminate any hesitation there, right? And then of course you have the CTA, which sells the click, right? Whether that's going to be shop now, learn more, download a guide, visit our blog, whatever that may be. All right. Now, onto psychology in copywriting, right? Effective email copywriting is about understanding the psychology behind why people buy, right? So by tapping into these like triggers, these psychological triggers, you can create copy that resonates on a deeper level and gets people to actually convert, right? Now we'll have a look at a few things in which you can leverage in your copy the next time you sit down to tap into these psychological triggers. The first one is going to be scarcity and urgency. People are way more likely to act when they feel like they're going to miss out. Nobody wants to feel like they're missing out. So creating a sense of urgency, scarcity, for example, only 5 left in stock, or sale is ending soon, sale ends at midnight, can create prompter decisions, quicker decisions, right? Social proof. At our core, we are social creatures, and of course, we are much more likely to purchase something if there has been thousands of other people saying that they have had a fantastic experience. So use that to your advantage as well, using social proof. Reciprocity. So when you give something of value, people feel a natural urge to give something in return. So if you're constantly, for example, hard selling customers all of the time, always trying to give them discounts, always trying to push them over the edge, always trying to ask for the purchase, that's going to leave a bad taste in the customer's mouth. But instead, if you are, for example, giving educational newsletters, you're sharing how-to guides, busting myths in the industry, giving them actual useful value, useful content, that customer then will feel a bit more obliged to then make that purchase once you do ask for the purchase, right? And then of course consistency as well. People like to be consistent with their past behavior. So reminding customers of their previous purchases or interactions can help you help the customer continue that relationship. So a good example of this would be in a post-purchase email. If you're selling supplements, for example, you may want to tell a customer that hey, look, don't try to continue this good habit that you've just started. So let's say it's a dietary supplement. Let's say it's some form of supplement that might help you focus, for example, right? Now, what you may want to do in that example is let them know all of the benefits that they probably have experienced by taking that for the first time. But you want to also let them know that hey, look, continue this good habit. If you continue this good habit, it's going to lead to benefit 1, benefit 2, benefit 3. And they will obviously want to stay in line with their past behaviors. They'll want to stay in line with that habit that they've just, decided to start for themselves. So that's kind of an example of how you could use consistency in your copy. Anchoring is a cognitive bias where people rely heavily on the first piece of information they see. So by presenting a higher priced item first, you make subsequent offers seem like a better deal. So that's important to know. Framing is how you present information and can significantly impact decision making. So this is crucial for when you're testing offers. But for instance, get 20% off may be more compelling than save $10 off or whatever that may be, right? Or for example, 10% off. So let's say save 10% off could be much more, let's say, valuable, or let's say drive more conversions than if you were to say get $10 off when you spend $100 or more, which is essentially the same offer. So framing is very, very important in your copy. And then of course storytelling, which we've already explained, but it's not just for entertainment, it's also a powerful tool to create emotional connections with your audience and influence some form of decision. Now, a few common mistakes to avoid with copyright is number 1, overcomplicating your message, neglecting mobile optimization as well, but this is more of a design thing, ignoring audience preferences, and overloading it with CTAs. If you avoid all of these mistakes, you should be sweet, right? Don't overcomplicate your message. Don't try to get multiple points across in one video, or in one email, I should say, or in one piece of advertising. If you're neglecting mobile optimization, that just means that essentially your copy could be too small on mobile. So that's more, again, of a design thing. And ignoring audience preferences as well. One size does not fit all. It doesn't work with email marketing, right? So use segmentation to tailor your messaging to different groups. For example, buyers, non-buyers, VIP customers, subscription customers. There's a load of different pockets in there that you need to speak to differently, right? And then overloading with CTAs, that kind of pertains to the initial piece of advice I gave about overcomplicating your message. If you're trying to get a customer to, let's say, shop for a product, and then you're trying to get them to head to a blog, and then you're trying to get them to download a guide, it's too much. There's too many decisions to make, and then inevitably the customer will actually end up not making a decision at all.
Hopefully you enjoyed that copywriting section, and now it is time to dive into flows.
And we're going to kind of dive into why it's crucial to have your email marketing flows dialed in for your e-commerce brand. Now here is the hidden cost of overlooking your email flows. You're spending thousands on ads, driving quality traffic to your store, and you're seeing decent click-through rates, but something just isn't adding up, right? Despite all this investment, your overall revenue isn't growing as it should. If it sounds familiar, you're likely facing a common but costly problem in e-commerce, running a sophisticated ad strategy with a primitive email marketing system. And that is a crucial mistake that a lot of brands are making. So I want to quickly talk to you about the leaky bucket syndrome. Now, if you think about it, you're spending a lot of money getting people to come to your website. They're looking at products and then they're bouncing. But if you don't have the correct pop-up form and of course flows on the back end of that to retarget those customers, you're pouring water into a leaky bucket. And I want to show you what this looks like in real terms. So for every 100 visitors your ads bring to the store, typically only 2 to 3 will make a purchase on their first visit. Without proper email flows or a pop-up form as well to actually get the email in the first place. And by the way, I have another video, you can probably click somewhere in the screen to watch that and how to set up a pop-up form. But again, without the proper email flows, you're letting the other 97 to 98 potential customers slip away after literally paying to bring them to your store. Now here's why email flows are your foundation. They convert abandoned carts into sales, turn first-time buyers into repeat customers, they reactivate dormant customers, they build relationships with new customers, they maximize lifetime value of each customer, and without these automated systems in place, you're essentially paying premium prices for traffic. Now they are your 24/7 sales team, and in this guide we're going to cover the following flows: the welcome series, the checkout, the cart, the browse abandonment, the site abandonment, the post-purchase, the customer win-back flow, and the VIP flow as well. So let's get into it. The welcome series. What we kind of recommend here is to go between 6 to 8 emails. You'll want to kind of maybe stay a bit flexible with this as well, and you might want to add more emails over time if you're seeing good engagement on, you know, the last email of your welcome series. But again, that's more kind of advanced. You do this kind of more so long term, but this is just kind of making sure that you have the foundations in place. And what I've seen is, especially if you have, let's say, a health product or a skincare product, you can actually go quite long with this because there's a lot of educational pieces that you have to get across in the welcome series. And one thing to remember as well before we dive into this is that please keep one email, one idea, one main objective. Don't try to do multiple things in an email. For example, I see a lot of brands in their welcome email, they're asking them to use their discount, then they're trying to send them to a blog, and then they're asking for a referral, and then they're asking for something else. And the customer is just bombarded with just information. Just keep it clean, one main idea, one clear CTA. Now, why this matters is, like this flow more specifically, the first email of this flow is going to be the most opened, clicked, and probably bought from email in your entire funnel. And it will also, you of course, have the highest conversion rate by and large. So nailing this is absolutely crucial. It's the first interaction a customer has with your brand. It allows you to tell your brand story, showcase some USPs, testimonials, reviews, send them to blogs. It's a chance to set expectations as well. It's the first impression, and first impressions do matter. So we're just going to quickly talk about the technical setup for this one. The trigger, of course, being when someone is added to a list. So in this case, we're calling it the master list for our agency. We just do that for our clients. Whatever list you're sending people to is the list which you're going to use for this. So your main list, your newsletter list. And then the filters you want to set up here are placed order 0 times since starting this flow. A little checklist that you want to run through before doing the technical setup here is that you must have a master list set up. You want to make sure that you have the flow exclusion trigger set up that I just showed there about placed order 0 times since starting this flow, because of course when someone places an order you want to kick them out. And then double opt-in must be turned off for the list as well. So here is actually how you do that. You just go to the list and segments, you go to your newsletter list or your master list, and then you make sure that you turn off double opt-in and you turn on single opt-in. And of course, make sure to click save because it won't save if you don't do it. The reason why you'll also do this is just so that you can speed up your list growth. You don't really want someone signing up for a discount and then them having to click one email to confirm their subscription and then wait another minute for the next email to come. It just creates more friction. Now the strategy for this and the ultimate goal is to get the customer to place an order as quickly as possible. But that being said, it's a great opportunity to showcase other aspects of your brand, the USPs, what makes your brand unique, your brand philosophy, the story, the best-selling products. There's a lot of information you can kind of get across here. And again, please do remember what I said at the start of the video. One main idea, one email, one clear CTA. Do not try to do multiple different things things in one email. Now I just want to quickly show you some examples here, and you can see one here from True Classic, a nice simple email. CTA is nice up and high. We have the offer clear as well, and we have our little code. I would probably make this code a bit more abundant in the email, to be honest with you, but it's not a bad effort. And of course, True Classic are one of the biggest D2C brands, so again, I'm sure that they obviously are getting good conversions on this. They might be split testing things, but my recommendation would be to have your code up a bit higher, just so customers don't kind of miss that. But you'll also see here that they're showcasing some reviews, showcasing some products. It's nice and simple. They're not really asking you to do 100 different things. They just want you to use their discount, and then they're going to save later emails then to talk to you about different things. We have a second email here as well, and generally what we like to do at our agency is try and showcase a bit of personality behind the brand, showcase the founders, the story, why was it started, and try to build that personal connection with the customer. Then for welcome email 3, what you might want to do here is position some products in front of the customer. You might want to showcase some reviews, and just build up a bit more trust with the customer as well. Now we're on to email 4. This might be a discount reminder, letting customers know like, hey, that discount you signed up for, yeah, it's actually, expiring in a couple of days, and it adds a bit of urgency, tries to get that customer to place an order as quickly as possible. Because remember, those first 30 days with a new subscriber are crucial. Engagement does tend to dip after that, so making sure that the customer is as engaged as possible within this first 30-day window is incredibly important. And of course, by engagement, I do mean trying to get them to place an order as well. And then welcome email 5. If you have a quiz on your website, it might be a good opportunity to send them to a quiz, or it might be a good opportunity to, position some different options in front of the customer as well. If they're a bit overwhelmed by the products on your website, you might try to position a few things in their way to try and, help them come up with a decision. So this is a nice way, Natalist are doing this, where they have a little kind of bundle quiz, and they have different scenarios here and different recommendations based off of those scenarios. So that's a really, really cool email, and it slightly kind of gamifies the experience as well. It's a bit different to other emails, so that's quite a good one to take note of. And then welcome flow 6, again, kind of pushing some reviews. The reason why you're seeing a lot of reviews here as well is, of course, you have to remember the main reason why a lot of customers don't take out their credit card or their debit card or whatever and place an order with your brand is because there's not enough trust built up with your brand yet. So you will need to do that through social selling, through customer reviews, testimonials, social proof, and it's a great way to do that. So now we're on to welcome email 7. Again, we're kind of pushing the urgency with the discounts, trying to get them to use that before it expires, and try to use actual urgency here as well. You'll see Feeling Swell has done this quite well. That kind of rhymes, but anyway, it's a nice simple email. They clearly just want them to get to use the discount. They're not asking them to do anything else. So that's a nice simple email. And you see another one here from Young Goose. Simple idea to the email. We're just trying to get them to use the code that they signed up for. Now we're onto the abandoned checkout flow, and the length here, generally about 3 to 5 emails. Kind of depends on engagement, depends on your specific brand, depends on like whether you want to offer discounts in the abandoned checkout flow as well. But just having a quick look at why this actually matters. Abandoned checkout emails can recover 10 to 20% of lost sales. It's an opportunity to address objections, concerns that the customer has, offer reassurance, and even if a sale isn't completed, you can still collect some valuable data as well from the customer, which I'll explain to you guys in a second. Now, one thing that is really important to know, the abandoned checkout and the abandoned cart, they're 2 separate flows. The abandoned checkout is triggered when someone starts the checkout. The abandoned cart is triggered when someone adds the cart. 2 totally different flows. And I still to this day see 7 and 8 figure brands missing this, and they're missing out on a lot of traffic and a lot of revenue as well. Now the technical setup for the abandoned checkout, as I mentioned, trigger is checkout started. The filters will be they've placed orders 0 times since starting this flow, and you want to make sure that you're not retargeting people too frequently as well with this. So you probably want to make sure that they haven't been live in the flow within the last 2 weeks. Again, that's kind of dependent on your aggressiveness appetite as well, but generally 14 days is quite a good starting point. And then going on to the abandoned cart, the cart trigger here is going to be added to cart, and then our flow filters will be place order 0 times since starting this flow, because we don't want to be following up with them if they've already placed an order, of course. They haven't been in the flow in the last 30 days, you can use 14 as well. It's completely down to personal preference. And then they've checkout started 0 times since starting this flow. That will just make sure that the abandoned checkout and the abandoned cart flows aren't double sending. Now the strategy here, and there's multiple ways in which you can kind of do this, but what I would suggest is have a think for your own brand, and you can come up with an idea as to whether you want to split based off of the purchase history. So whether they're a buyer or a non-buyer, whether they're looking at a specific collection, specific product, or a mixture of all of these things together. Because for example, if you have a product or 2 or 3 products in your store which are completely outperforming the rest of your products, you might want to have specific flows for them and talk about those products specifically if customers are looking at those. Now here are a few nice examples of abandoned checkout / cart emails you see here from Young Goose. They're nice and simple, like nice simple copy, clear CTA, nice up and high in the email. That's something that you'll notice across all three of these. CTA placement is nice and high because we want to get them to click through. And of course, it's going to be above the fold on mobile, but the copy is quite limited in these, which is a good thing. We literally just want to remind the customer about what they've ordered, showcase some, risk reversal mechanisms. You'll see Dollar Shave Club do this quite well. If we kind of zoom in here, first box arrives in 3 to 5 days, free shipping, get razors every month or every other month, 100% satisfaction guarantee. So they're obviously overcoming some common objections that their customers may have. And then hooks here have backed by saying it's vegan and gluten free, complete nutrition. So nice little benefit icons there as well, nice minimal copy, and the customer clearly has one clear action to take, and that is tap to order, complete their order. So that's a really nice example here. So now we're onto the browse abandonment flow, and this is targeting customers who are viewing products but they haven't added a cart, started a checkout, or placed an order. Now why this actually matters is like those emails are reminding potential customers of the products they've looked at, they're rekindling their interest and bringing them back to your site. You can use it to highlight features, benefits, customer reviews, and again, remember with this, these are pre-purchase flows, generally speaking, unless you're splitting it based off of buyers and non-buyers. But for all of these abandonment flows, your job is to build up as much trust as possible with the customer. That's the main reason why they're not taking the next action. They don't trust the product. They don't maybe trust the efficacy of the product. They maybe don't trust that there's enough reviews about the product. Maybe they have issues about shipping times. Maybe they have issues about guarantees. So your job in all of these abandonment flows is to kind of overcome all of those objections. Now the technical setup is it's triggered when someone views a product. The flow filters that you want to have set up is checkout started, placed order 0 times since starting this flow, has not been in it in the last 14 days, and they have not added to the cart since starting this flow. That's basically just to, again, stop any kind of overlap between multiple different flows. Now, the checklist you want to have here is that, make sure that the metric, the event is set up correctly, the trigger event. You want to set up the exclusions as I just showed you, making sure that the correct URL is showing as well. So you want to make sure that the link on your CTA buttons is bringing them to the product that they actually viewed. And Klaviyo does this with a dynamic link. So if you're using Klaviyo, you should be able to pull a dynamic link from Klaviyo. Obviously setting up dynamic coupon codes if needed, and then making sure that the email is showing the products that the customer has viewed as well. Now the strategy here is actually very similar to an abandoned checkout or cart, and you have a number of ways in which you can split that up based off of purchase history, the collection they were looking at, the product that they were looking at, and again, a mixed approach. So it's very similar to the abandoned checkout and abandoned cart. So just bear that in mind. So here's some browse abandonment examples, and what you'll notice as well is they're quite similar to the abandoned checkout in the sense that the emails themselves are actually quite condensed. There's not much copy in them, there's not much like heaviness, text heaviness. It's nice and simple. We're literally just trying to get them to come back and look at the product that they're reviewing. So we have a product image here, product image here, product image here. Nice clear CTA up high in the email, and then we have some social proof, especially in this email, kind of backing up the effectiveness of the product. And we of course in all emails more or less have the icons down here as well, which are kind of risk reversal icons. So if we kind of zoom in here, we have very small writing, might be hard to see, subscribe and save 10%, free shipping, you can sign up for text alerts, and then you can obviously do referrals as well. We'll probably stay away from offering referrals or text in a browse abandonment because you probably just want the customer to actually, view the product and place an order. So it probably wouldn't really just distract customers with that kind of stuff. Maybe you would probably add in a bit more risk reversal, maybe about what kind of guarantee the brand has, money back guarantee. But again, it's a very, very good email aside from that. And then again, same with the other two emails, nice and simple. So definitely take note of these. Now we're onto the site abandonment flow. This is the last flow of the, let's say, abandonment series or the pre-purchase series of flows. And this one is going to be retargeting customers who are like active on the website, but they're not viewing products. So for example, they could be on the homepage or they could be on a blog, but they haven't gone any further. They haven't placed an order. They haven't added it to checkout or added to the cart. And the strategy for this flow, or why this actually matters, I should say, is that like it reminds visitors of the interest that they had in your brand. You might put in some, let's say, product recommendations as well, because they might have simply just not known what the product, like what best product will be for them. Using these emails, obviously, to share your brand story is important, showcasing customer reviews, testimonials. And again, going back to what I was saying across this whole video, the job is to build up as much trust as possible. That's always the goal of these abandonment flows, build up that trust, and build that trust through social proof, through reviews, testimonials, showcasing the effectiveness of the product. If you're selling perhaps, skincare supplements, showcasing befores and afters, showcasing transformations. So that's something to keep top of mind in all of these abandonment flows. Now the technical setup here is that the trigger is when they are active on the site, and the filters we have set up are that they've added a card 0 times, since starting this flow, view product, checkout started, placed order 0 times since starting this flow, and they haven't been in the last 30 days. We generally like to go with 30 days for this flow because it can be quite invasive. Customers might be a bit kind of weirded out about the fact that they're getting a site abandonment email. So one thing to kind of remember with these is like try not to be overly creepy about it and like clearly stating that you've saw them on the website, because some customers might find that a bit weird. Now the strategy of this is simply to just re-engage the customer, like try to show them some options. Don't become overly creepy with your messaging as well, that you saw them on the website. But these customers are not as warm as someone who's in an abandoned checkout flow. So just do bear that in mind. Your job is to just put some recommendations in their place, showcase some, you know, reviews, social proof, and then try to help them to come up with their decision. Now some examples here are this one, which is nice and clean, showcasing some bestsellers. So you can see how this brand here, Lamborghini, is actually showcasing some different options in terms of what the customer can purchase. So showcasing some nice little options for them there. You'll also see here, if we just scroll outwards a small bit because we might be a bit zoomed in too much, we have some emails here just showcasing some reviews, so showcasing some customer success stories, and same over here as well. So we're just building up that trust with the customer, not being overly invasive, not really saying that we saw them on the website, but just showcasing them that brand is trusted. Now we're onto the post-purchase flow. This is one of the most important flows that you can have in your e-commerce store, and I see literally so many brands getting this wrong. And anyone can set up an abandoned checkout flow and get good results, like by and large, because these customers are super high intent. But the real skill is actually embedded in getting these customers to come back and purchase a second or third time through a post-purchase flow, and making sure that the customer has a great experience after they've taken out their, you know, their card details and spent money with your brand. Now, this is crucial because the few things you want to do in this is thank the customer. You want to remove buyer's remorse, so you want to make sure that the customer feels good about spending money on your product. You'll want to share product guides and tips, personally check in as well, and this works really well if you send a plain text email checking in from the founder and then pushing them to an SMS list and then asking for a reorder. You want to make sure that you're doing all of these things before you're asking for a reorder, just to leave the customer with a good experience and make sure that like everything is kind of looking sweet from a customer experience standpoint before you start asking with the handout for a reorder. It will just make sure that the customer has a good experience with your brand. Now the technical setup for this is when, of course, someone has placed an order, and the flow filters you want to have set up are that they've placed an order 0 times since starting this flow, they've cancelled an order 0 times since starting this flow, and they've refunded an order 0 times since starting this flow. The last thing you want to be doing is sending someone a post-purchase flow if they've just got refunded or if they've just cancelled their order. So it might just, you know, come across as a bit weird. Now I actually have another video on the complete strategy for this post-purchase series. You can feel free to watch that. There'll be a link somewhere around this video to watch it. So do make sure to check that out. This video goes super in depth on the post-purchase strategy, and I strongly recommend you checking that out. Now here's a few examples from post-purchase emails from different brands that I really liked. Again, they're not really in sequence, but definitely some good ideas here for sure. You'll see here, this one is just kind of like a personal check-in. So you'll see here, this is Dr. Tony checking in to see how it's transitioning to Sundays, blah, blah, blah. And it's a nice little check-in. So that leaves a good kind of experience for the customer, leaves a good taste in their mouth. You'll see here this brand DOS here as well, just showcasing some tips on how to best use a product as well, because that's super important. Customers need to know how to use a product. Do not assume that the customer knows how to use a product just because they've bought from you. You want to make sure that you're getting that across in your communication and basically like negating any chance of them not knowing. So make sure to get that across in your emails. You'll see here as well that ritual showcasing that like vitamins are coming at you, essential for women, delivered by this date. So that's really good. They can track their order. And there's a nice little plug to a referral system here as well, where they can give $5, get $5. And it's a nice way to try and increase word of mouth marketing as well in that post-purchase sequence. Now the second and last flow that we're going to talk about is the customer win back. This is going to be targeting customers who've placed an order, but they haven't come back in a certain time frame. And this certain time frame is going to completely depend on how often customers generally tend to come back for your brand. Now this is going to be important because it's going to retain value. You can get targeted with your communication. You can set up some gradual incentives to get this customer to come back. You can appeal to their emotions as well, reminding them of the, reminding you guys of the consistency principle. And this kind of relates to people want to maintain consistency with their past experiences. So if you remind them that like, hey, look, you were using this product, you used it for 30 days, why don't you keep up this habit? It increases your chances of getting that customer to come back because they want to maintain consistency with past behavior. And it's obviously, of course, a fantastic way to boost your LTV. Now the technical setup is when they've placed an order, or else you could actually do this based off a fulfilled order. And then of course, the profile filters are place orders 0 times since starting this flow. So you don't want to keep following up with them if they've already placed an order. Now you can also add a time delay to this as well. What I would suggest doing is finding out what your average time delay is between orders. You can actually do this by exporting a list of your buyers in Klaviyo or whatever email marketing platform you're using. And then you can find the average day between orders. So select that as another export property when you're taking out your sheet. I can actually nearly make another YouTube video about this, by the way. And what you can do is you can take the average, so the average of the average essentially, or the average times days between orders. And then you can perhaps come up with an average of, let's say, 90 days. So then you might decide to maybe send your customer in back at the 75-day mark, just before they're maybe running out of new product. But whatever way you do it, I would strongly recommend split testing 2 different time delays just to see what works best. Now the strategy here is that the customer journey does not end when the customer has placed an order. That is literally just the beginning. The real challenge is getting these customers to come back, and that's why this flow is so crucial. It's about reminding them what they're missing out on, reinforcing your brand's unique selling points, and most importantly as well is reminding them of that good habit that they've just kept up. For example, if you're selling supplements or skincare, you want to remind them that that's a good habit. They should try to continue to do that. Now, here's some nice examples of customer win-back emails. You'll see here that, of course, missing that Chocam feeling. So you were just trying to remind them, hey, did you like the feeling of that product? Are you missing it? Then you're just showcasing the benefits again and asking them to place a reorder. We have another one here as well, showcasing a nice product shots. And now we have another one here just showcasing more, of course, top picks for the customer as well. So just showcasing a bit more options, try to get them to get onto other products as well, if that's an option. And last but not least, we have the VIP flow. So this flow is actually going to retarget customers who have placed a certain amount of orders or they've spent a certain amount of money, completely dependent on your own brand. For most brands, what we would do is we'd say, okay, if the person has placed 3 orders overall time, they're considered a VIP. And what you want to do in this flow is make sure that these customers are treated like royalty. Now, why this actually matters is that it's a good way to kind of acknowledge your top customers, make them feel, again, like royalty, make them feel appreciated. You can offer them special perks, discounts, offers, VIP only content, and you're creating a feeling of exclusivity as well amongst your top customers. So it's definitely worth doing this. The conversion rates are generally very, very good with these kind of flows as well. So it's something I would recommend you have to have in your strategy. Now the technical setup here is you'll see that I have a segment called VIP 3+ purchasers. We have the profile filter, of course, place order 0 times since starting this flow. We do not want to be following up with these customers if they place an order throughout the flow. We have our segment here, so they've placed an order at least 3 over all time. And then the person can receive email marketing, of course, because the person is subscribed. We want to make sure they're actually on the list. Now the strategy here is all about making sure the customer feels appreciated. You're rolling out the red carpet for them. You're giving them perks. You could actually even use this as a data source as well. Ask the customers to, let them know how their experience is. Is there anything that they would change? Because these are brand advocates. They're probably more than likely to give you some good advice on where you can improve your systems, your business, the customer experience. So I would probably recommend trying to extract some information from these customers as well, because they're a fantastic data source. Now here is a few examples of different VIP emails as well. You'll see here that 2 out of these 3 that I've chosen are plain text, because I feel like this comes across as quite personal. And of course, this one's from the founders. It has the VIP code in that as well. Lets them know they're part of the VIP club as well. You'll see this one has a discount as well. So it's good to kind of reward these customers, make them feel appreciated. And I think a plain text email kind of works well in these situations. Plain text check-in from the founder here, letting them know hey, you're in the VIP club, and making them just feel appreciated for that.
Although this section is at the end of this video, this is definitely one of the most important aspects of your entire email marketing strategy. It does not matter if you have the best copy in the world, the best design, the best strategy. It does not matter unless someone actually opens your email. So now it is time to get into deliverability.
So if you're not familiar, email deliverability refers to the ability to land into someone else's inbox. Basically, not landing in spam. So why does this actually matter, right? High deliverability makes sure that your beautifully designed, your really well written emails land into someone's inbox. It actually reaches your audience. Poor deliverability, right, can result in your emails landing in spam and no one sees them. Nobody wants that. It'll improve your open rates, click rates, conversion rates down the line as well. So it is, again, absolutely foundational. This is so, so important. And you're wasting your time learning about strategy, learning about design, until you know the fundamentals of deliverability. So first things first is, how would you know if you actually had poor deliverability, right? So number 1 is declining open rates, increase in bounce rates, low click rates, high spam rates, high unsubscribe rates, and obviously, last but not least, getting feedback from recipients as well, and internal testing. Sometimes if you're sending out a load of emails for an e-commerce brand, you might get, internal members saying, hey, this landed in my spam folder. Obviously that is a sign that your deliverability is poor. So for declining open rates, that will signal that your emails are not reaching the inbox and being filtered to spam or the promotions folder. Promotion folder is a bit harder to avoid as a spam folder, because obviously the ESP or ISP algorithms are quite sophisticated, so it is quite harder to sidestep the promotions tab on Gmail. Increasing bounce rates, right? This can indicate that there's issues with the email list quality, so you might have a lot of dead subscribers in your list, or you have problems with your sending domain's reputation. So your sender domain reputation, think of this as if it's let's say a credit score for sending out emails. That's essentially it. As simple as that. And the better deliverability you have, the better sender reputation you have. Low click rates, that can obviously indicate that your emails aren't engaging. They might be relevant, and relevancy is quite an important thing, because relevancy is going to dictate whether someone's going to open or click your email. For example, if you have never been to the website before and you start getting emails saying that you've abandoned, you've abandoned checkout, or you're being reminded about a product that you were looking at, that's not relevant because the person wasn't on the website. Now, that's just a random example, probably wouldn't happen, but hopefully that kind of illustrates a way in which the content isn't relevant. Or, for example, if you have a fashion brand and you have both male and female clothes, and you're sending female products, like images of female products, to male customers, that's not relevant. So therefore, those customers may mark it as spam, they may unsubscribe, which will diminish your sender reputation. High spam rates, this is probably one of the most important things to look out for, because spam is much more serious than an unsubscribe, and spam will affect your sender reputation a lot more than an unsubscribe. So it's really key that you try to be very careful with your spam rates. High unsubscribe rates, that just means that your emails probably again aren't relevant to the audience, or you're sending too frequently. Now, if you open up your Klaviyo or your email marketing account and you're seeing something that looks a bit like that, you know that you have poor deliverability. You shouldn't be getting below 20% open rates, even 30% nowadays, because they're inflated anyway. Ideally, you should be aiming for 40% plus open rates. Now, here are some general guidelines to follow on your deliverability metrics that might help as a general rule of thumb. And feel free to screenshot this. If you want, this guide will be available down in the description. So just click the link in the description and you'll be able to access this guide. But this is a good benchmark to follow. And okay, if my open rate is less than 10%, you're in serious trouble. To be honest, these days, I think that if your open rate is less than 30%, you still have a lot of work to do. So in that scenario, if your open rates were, let's say, below 30%, what I would do in that case is I would tighten your engaged segments. So send primarily to people who have opened or clicked an email within the last 7 to 14 days. Build up the sender reputation. Make sure that your emails are hitting above 40% open rates for at least 2 weeks, and then start opening up your engaged segments. And by opening up, I mean moving from 7 or 14 days to maybe 30 to 60 days. Now, here are some best practices to maintain good deliverability, right? We have technical practices, we have behavioral practices. First of all, the technical practices, the foundational stuff, includes having a dedicated sending domain. So you can set this up easily in Klaviyo. Just drop a comment below in the comment section if you need any help with some guidance on this. Making sure that DMARC records are set up for the domain, and make sure that you're aware that DMARC records are not set in Klaviyo or in your email service provider like SendLane or Klaviyo. These are set in your DNS records or in your domain settings on wherever you bought your domain. So for example, GoDaddy. And make sure that your email sender name matches the domain name. So for example, if you're sending emails for Nike, you don't want the sender name to be John and then the domain to be Nike.com. You want to make sure that the sender name is Nike and the domain is Nike.com. So a lot of brands might do this just to try and increase open rates. For example, they might use some funky names in the sender name and it doesn't match the domain name. It's a lot stricter now, so you need to be really careful with this. So make sure that they are obviously matching each other. In terms of behavioral practices, right? So this is just kind of the behavioral stuff that you're doing within the emails itself. You should avoid sending to the list regularly. The entire list, I should say. So don't be sending to all contacts in your database, because there's going to be a lot of people who are like, you know, unengaged there. They mightn't have opened an email in quite some time, and you're just going to destroy your email account. Using images with heavy file sizes, so try to keep them below 300 kilobytes. Using capitalization emojis too much, excessively. Same goes with links. Sending too many emails as well. I'm a big advocate, and I've actually even made a separate YouTube video about hypothetically sending emails to your list every single day without annoying your customers, but this is done carefully through segmentation. So don't just, you know, fire out emails, let's say 20 a month, and it's all going to the same people, all to the same segment. You should be splitting that up between buyers and non-buyers, VIP customers, and other various different segments as well. Like last but not least here in the behavioral practices is not excluding the correct segments. So you need to be making sure that you're excluding the correct segments. Klaviyo, or like the likes of any ESP, they don't get it right all of the time. So you need to make sure that you're excluding bounce contacts, people who are suppressed, people who are marked as spam, unsubscribed, and in general unengaged contacts. Now you'll also want to be cleaning your list as well, and generally there's two ways to actually do this. You can set up a sunset flow where it semi-automatically does it for you, or you can create unengaged segments. Now you'll have access to the links to these different guides, based like their Klaviyo guides. This will be down in the link in the description, so access that if you want to give those a read. Now I have another YouTube video about, you know, a scenario where you have low open rates and what to do based off of that. So feel free to check that out. I think it'll be very, very valuable. And also the video that I was speaking about a while ago, how to hypothetically email your list every single day, because I am an advocate of maximizing the volume that you're sending as long as you can do it carefully. And that video should, you know, teach you all of that.
So there you have it, the complete email marketing system. If this course helped you, please do me a favor, hit the like, hit the subscribe button so you don't miss future content like this. And if you do want me to cover more topics that I didn't cover in this video, please leave a comment below and I'll try my very best to make a video on that exact topic. And if you are a brand owner watching this and you're kind of thinking, I have so much to do in regards to email marketing, I either don't have the time or expertise, click the link down below in the description where we can offer you a free audit, no strings attached, exactly for your brand, and I will personally do it myself. So if that is you and you are a brand owner, make sure to click that link down below in the description and book a call in with myself. If not, no worries, and I'll catch you on the next video.